and tonight I bring to you the biggest political scoop of this season. Times Now and the Newshour is always your destination for the biggest scoops of what's going on in the corridors of power. It has always been your destination for all big political developments, and we are back with a super exclusive this Thursday evening. It has been 2 years and 10 days for Modi Sarkar 2.0, and the Prime Minister has decided that it is time for a makeover. A makeover to rejuvenate the Union Cabinet, which has also been a victim of the pandemic because ideas, plans have had to be put on the back burner as a COVID war and current reactions were only related to COVID. Now, it is important for the Prime Minister to look at a rejuvenated team, a fresh look, a facelift, an image makeover, call it what you will. But the big news is that starting tomorrow, the Prime Minister is beginning to meet sector-wise his colleagues in the cabinet. Sector-wise, and that can only mean one thing. And yes, this is from various sources that we have spoken to. When the Prime Minister begins to meet ministers sector-wise to discuss with them not just what has been done so far, but what is the way forward, what are the things that need to be done, there is a very, very close eye on the governance that he needs to push up and put on high priority after battling with the second wave of COVID. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the process that begins tomorrow. Many are calling it the beginning and the countdown to the reshuffle of his cabinet, because he's going to be holding meetings that are now being called assessment meetings, consultations starting tomorrow. Some of these are going to be in performance review form, some of them are the road forward, ideation, and all sorts of interactions and consultations beginning tomorrow. He is also considering taking off the load, because some ministers have 3 or 4 or 5 portfolios with them, and that also requires to be shared with newcomers who come in, fresh faces who bring in fresh ideas. The countdown begins tomorrow, so why is the reshuffle being done now? Many would say that this exercise is not the need of the hour given that we are in the midst of a pandemic. But yes, there is the first wave behind us, the second wave, yes, there were tough times. Those times have been handled. Numbers seem to be coming down below the 1 lakh per day mark. In fact, they were around 80,000 odd in the last couple of days. And this is the time that the Prime Minister is looking to refurbish not just the image, but also the working style and the levels of governance that people have come to expect from him. And I can tell you at least 5 reasons why he's doing it at this stage. Whether it happens in a week or 2 or 10 days, we can't yet tell you. But the fact that these consultations have begun gives us a sense that it is imminent now, and it will happen sooner than later, maybe in a matter of days, matter of weeks, certainly not months. Reason number 1, the caseload is below the 1 lakh mark. Reason number 2, the COVID-19 second wave has come as a bit of a wake-up call, and clearly it has come as a kind of a warning that there is something that has been taken for granted, and therefore there is a fresh zeal that is required to be injected. Reason number 3, an image makeover is something that people have come to expect from the Prime Minister, not just the opposition. And of course, the loss in Bengal shows that there is something more that is expected of the Modi Sarkar. Reason number 4, many sectors and ministries need rejuvenation after the COVID shock, and bringing in fresh faces and fresh ideas would help with that. And reason number 5, there has been no reshuffle since the Prime Minister took over in 2019. Yes, 2 years, 10 days and counting. Joining me on the Newshour tonight are my colleagues, Editor Internal Security Nikunj Garg, also joining me Senior Editor Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan, and both of them with me on the show tonight. Nikunj, you would understand this. You look at the Home Ministry and the overall functioning of the government, and the fact that in the interim period between wave 1 and wave 2, there was just a little bit of slackening, whether it is the bureaucracy or whether you actually blame the politicians. The fact was that a rejuvenation, a fresh energy is something that is required right now, not later.
Well, absolutely, Navika. Most crises, by their very nature, demand a fresh enthusiasm, a fresh impetus of energy. And there is no other way to describe the second wave of COVID pandemic in this country but as a crisis. Many people see this as a moment when the political superstructure of the country realized that the bureaucracy on itself cannot be left without political guidance in the moments when the nation has to steer or raise itself to face a challenge. And therefore, that acute awareness is there in the mind of the Prime Minister. If you believe his close set of advisors, people who interact with him on regular basis, he also knows and realizes, no one realizes it better than the Prime Minister in today's political setup. Remember, he has been at the helm of administrative affairs for close to 2 decades now, close to 13 years as a Chief Minister, then 7 years as a Prime Minister. He knows it fully well that unless properly guided, bureaucracy cannot be expected to deal with crisis of the magnitude of COVID pandemic, of the magnitude of the COVID wave pandemic too. Now, therefore, a fresh impetus of energy, a fresh direction to the governance structure, more critically, a political impetus to things that many would perceive as completely political, but are being dealt in a bureaucratic manner. Like, just look at various sectors, Navika. From security to civil aviation, to construction to government's highways programs. Many would see that these are merely bureaucratic outreach programs of the government being supervised by the bureaucrats. But that's not true. There is a lot of political impetus that goes in it, and a overarching political direction to subsume under the overarching direction of the Prime Minister and his vision for the country is something that separates Mr. Narendra Modi's government largely from the previous governments that this country has recently seen. This is a chain that he cannot afford to be broken. Therefore, that political direction to the overall movement of the governance superstructure is something that would bother him, that would concern him, and that in that he needs fresh infusion of energy is what many neutral experts are commenting. That's what my sense is would be on top of his mind when he begins this review exercise starting tomorrow, as you are reporting.
Well, there are also situations where several ministers have several portfolios under them. Whether you look at the agriculture minister, Mr. Narendra Singh Tomar, he has rural development, agriculture, panchayati raj, food processing industry. Look at the law minister, is the same as the telecom and IT minister. Look at the civil aviation minister, who has housing and urban affairs as a joint responsibility, also as Minister of State in Commerce and Industry. Piyush Goyal carries railways along with commerce and industries, and since the demise of Ram Vilas Paswan, also has charge of consumer affairs and public distribution. So these, also Harshvardhan, he's the Minister for Health and Family Welfare, also Science and Technology and Earth Sciences. Mr. Prakash Javadekar has a very important charge, which is the information and broadcasting, which is communication of the government's plans, government's decisions, government's intent, all of this. And apart from that, he has a very crucial Ministry of Environment as well. So these are, and also heavy industries and public enterprises. So these are ministers with multiple portfolios. And these are decisions that are waiting to be taken. It was supposed to be temporary when the Prime Minister swore in these ministers in 2019, but 2020 and 21 so far have been years in which the Prime Minister and the country has been involved in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, and therefore this has been put on the back burner. But besides this, let me get in Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan. Besides this, it is also the question of forthcoming elections, and that political consideration would also be on the mind of the Prime Minister, whether it is the Uttar Pradesh elections or Uttarakhand, Punjab, Goa, Himachal Pradesh, Gujarat, all of these states are going to elections next year. And, it might just become too close to these elections if these decisions are not taken now. Madhav?
Absolutely, Navika, and this has always been a consideration for the central government time and again whenever there have been reshuffles, not just during the NDA but also during UPA rule. Yes, it is a fact that the skew has always been towards those states that are poll bound to ensure that they get better representation, that there is no allegation that their states were not represented adequately at the center at a time when the polls are upcoming. So that is definitely a very important consideration, and along with the fact that you rightly mentioned over here of ministers who have multiple key portfolios at a time of a pandemic. While health is one area that would require the full-time attention, you have a situation where science and technology, earth sciences and other departments are also being handled by the same minister. So clearly, of course, when you have also the fact that there are several who are waiting in the wings, Sushil Modi, for instance, the two-time Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar, who has not found a place in the Bihar cabinet this time round, is one such person. There is, of course, Jyotiraditya Scindia, who played a key role in the regime change and the toppling of the Kamal Nath government. Jiten Prasad, who just joined, and also, of course, talk that has been there as far as former Assam Chief Minister Saba Naqvi is concerned. There are several such names that have been doing the rounds of those who are looking at a cabinet berth or could potentially enter the cabinet in coming days. Now, these are just some of the names. There will be, of course, many more who would have to be accommodated for different considerations, but also, of course, key departments which have played a very, very important role through the pandemic. The departments such as health, departments such as education and agriculture have seen a lot of firefighting that has happened, particularly in the context of the pandemic, and that's why these departments are also going to be looked at very, very crucially. Their roles would be reviewed very crucially. Also, the importance of reviving certain sectors because of the pandemic, which have been hit very adversely because of the pandemic. All of these are going to be very important considerations which are going to be taken into account when those review meetings happen. Navika.
Well, thank you, Nikunj and Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan, for joining me on this big breaking story. We are calling it the Cabinet Reshuffle Scoop, and going across to my panel this evening, between the three journalists on this panel, clearly we have 100 years of experience. So joining me tonight, senior journalists Rajagopalan, Sanjeev Srivastav, Saba Naqvi. Also joining me tonight is Mohandas Pai and Chetan Bhagat. Coming to you, Mohandas Pai first, and I want to get your sense as you look at these things from the outside. There are challenges aplenty as far as the Modi Sarkar is concerned. There is, of course, an opposition which will criticize it, but more than that, the second wave has created challenges, to the popularity of the Modi government, simply because the second wave has shown certain weaknesses. Do you think the Prime Minister at this opportune moment would be thinking that a new look, an image makeover and a renewed energy is the highest priority for him as a leader of this government?
Cabinet reshuffle for a very important reason. We had 2 years of COVID. It has hurt India very, very badly. A large number of people have slipped below poverty line. Consumption has come down by 6.5 lakh crores last year as per the GDP figures. And I think people have lost their income, and we need a revival. So we need 3 years of high economic growth to make sure that people's income goes up, there is growth, there's revenues, and I think we could come close to $5 trillion possibly by 2026-27. And I think it's extremely important to rejuvenate the cabinet and make sure that we have more ministers. Many ministers have multiple industries. And I do know that in many areas, the bureaucracy has not been up to the mark. Now, the bureaucracy has to be supervised by the political person, which is a minister. And if you let the bureaucrats run the show, it's not going to be okay. For example, in the COVID, the health ministry, they didn't play up to our expectations. They should have led from the front. They should have had teams in place to look at the second wave, because all around the world, the second wave was coming. They should have prepared everything. They should have gone on. They didn't do it. And they failed. At the end of the day, I think Prime Minister Modi had to come in and take charge and push them. I think there are a lot of things like this. To me, the most important thing is what is going to be the legacy of NDA 2. The legacy of NDA 2 economically has to be 5 years of high growth to make sure that poverty comes down. 2 years are gone. We got 3 years. So undivided attention has to be for the economy to make sure that everything goes. We also have to make sure that people get jobs, people get opportunities, because the first 2 years have not been very good. And globally too, we have a new president in the United States. We got to make sure that globally we do well too. So I think the overload on ministers must come down. We need a fresh faces, and communication should improve. To me, the biggest challenge in India too has been the lack of communication adequately, apart from the Prime Minister, for managing the COVID. So I think all this shows that there is a need for rejuvenation, there's a need for new faces, there's a need for high economic growth, there's a need for a great push forward. And I think it's time.
It's time. Saba Naqvi, you've been following the political space very closely. Saba Naqvi, do you think this is as good a time as any, and in fact it's most required at this time, because as Mr. Mohandas Pai said, that some of the weak links have been exposed during the second wave of COVID, and we've seen some of the systems really not working in a well-oiled manner as we expect them to. Bureaucracy works, sometimes only as much as it is being monitored, and that can be done when there is a strong leadership to give them the direction, and therefore it is required that some of the flanks that got exposed now need to be addressed, problems need to be addressed, and in any case, the Modi Sarkar has completed 2 years of being in power in Modi Sarkar 2.0, and it couldn't have come sooner. Saba?
So, Navika, we have gone through in my lifetime the worst time ever India going through in our country right now. And surely the government is also feeling the heat of that. I think the Modi Sarkar has bungled on the COVID policy, but thankfully there is a reversal in the Prime Minister's last address. Besides that, right now, economic growth and all, of course, are necessary. We are dealing with complete hunger and panic. People are begging all the time for rations. So I'm also glad that the Prime Minister extended free rations up to Diwali. That is really, they've just, the kind of people who have just lost jobs all around us. You would all know, we are answering distress calls all the time. There's just, in cities like ours, they've just lost work overnight. So I am anything that helps at this point. We're putting all, I think the government is also, the country is going through the worst time ever. I think the government has had the worst image crisis since April, May, than it's ever had in the 7 years of this regime. And yes, anything, I see no reason why Jyotiraditya will not be a decent administrator. I see no reason why Sonowal would not. I see no reason why you don't bring in more talent into the cabinet. I see no reason for that. On Jiten Prasad, it would be a remarkable case of someone just shifting parties, but I don't even want to make this about politics at this point and being rewarded for that so openly. But yes, anything at this point, anything that helps the country, anything that makes things work better, that's what I would say right now.
Well, let me get in Mr. Rajagopalan. Mr. Rajagopalan, you are connected. I hope you're as connected with your ear to the ground as you were pre-COVID days. What are your sources telling you? Do you think this is the time when the Modi Sarkar needs to be seen as rebounding, putting the past behind them, as in, what COVID-19 second wave did to us towards the end of April and the month of May, and really put its best foot forward, and therefore a talent induction, a little bit of changing around of the portfolios, a new set of goals and targets, and a new engagement with the public. Isn't that something that the Modi government would require at this point in time? And do you think, Mr. Modi would be more than keen to do it at this time, even before it gets once again derailed by talks of a third wave that keeps coming up in various scientific journals? This is the window that he has.
This is the window. You exactly put it, Navika. You have given a major political scoop today. My understanding is, I am not going to say about poverty. I am not going to say negative of things. I take a clue from Mr. Mohandas Pai. He indicated about health minister. So he may be dropped. So new face will be there. My understanding is 5 will be chopped off. 6 new faces may be coming in. And second thing, I would like to end with simply saying Prime Minister's speech on Monday was an indication. You also said sector-wise, etc. you are saying. But my political reading, Navika, today Jagan Mohan Reddy is in town. Today Mr. Yogi Adityanath met the Prime Minister. And second thing, the CBI, Intelligence Bureau, RAW, Election Commissioner, these things he has done it. So now he has to focus it on political matters. Apart from that, the Deputy Speaker of Lok Sabha is also pending for the last 2 years. Second, JDU is in waiting wings. ADMK is in waiting wings. Biju Janata Dal, will he be inducted? Because he is the only one supporter during the corona crisis. And apart from that, Jagan Mohan Reddy meeting tomorrow the Prime Minister, I take it very seriously because Prime Minister has started to give his thought. Today, as you know, Navika, you also reported, your team, that Nadda Saab had a met 1.5 hours. And apart from that, last week, RSS chief had deputed Mr. Dattatreya Boswale and Sunil Bansal. What all that indication? So he has to take the input from RSS. He has to take the input from the ally parties. He's going to be an ally now or 2023 or 2022. We have to wait and see. He's going to be only BJP reshuffle. How many faces? How many? And moreover, as you and me are all on daily touch with few ministers, they have a fatigue moment now because of the corona, because of negative feelings, because of the crisis what Mr. Narendra Modi faced. Apart from that, I have known Mr. Modi from very close quarters. As you said, we 3 journalists in this panel have put in 100 years of experience, but at least for the last 2 decades I have known Mr. Modi. He turns crisis into an opportunity. You say one political thing, Chaukidar Chor. He converted it into his vote bank. Today, Corona, he is turning it into his sin because he is not going to let down the people of the 138 crores Indians. The target, what he meant, Mr. Mohandas Pai indicated about US President newly elected. These are all side steps, but 70 crores of Indians are going to be vaccinated. Mr. Mohandas Pai knows about it. So it's a great achievement. In 1 year's time, he has got 2 Covaxin and COVID. So now, apart from that, I talk about the opposition. Opposition is very splintered.
You very well put it. Mr. Modi is known to create a crisis into an opportunity. You said you know him very well, but most people, even in his own party, say what he thinks. He keeps his cards very close to his chest. I don't know how many in his party will say that they know him very well. But let me get in Chetan Bhagat. Chetan Bhagat, I want to ask you one question. Yes, economic crisis, COVID crisis, but above all, the question is that this was Prime Minister Narendra Modi who faced possibly the biggest challenge in the last 7 years with the second wave of COVID. And, what looked at one time things gone horribly wrong have been taken care of, and the turnaround has happened, in terms of making available hospital beds, oxygen availability, medicines, vaccinations. You know, the little bit of time that India was thinking they had lost it all. Yes, we've paid a very hard price, but there was a reversal in terms of getting a grip on the situation. And now when it seems like he has the grip on the situation, Chetan Bhagat, do you think he will be looking at correcting some of the problems, some of the image, crisis that his government has faced over the last several weeks?
Yes, because it's never just routine in politics when things like this happen. There is always some signaling. And I think maybe, there has been certain perception that the government wasn't as focused on the second wave. They were busy in the Bengal elections and they didn't take certain steps. So I think the good old idea of governance, he wants to not just be known for, the Hindutva politics. He also wants to be known as a good governance leader. And I think he needs to show some demonstration of that. Now, how do you show it? So I think a reshuffle of a cabinet is a way to show it. Getting some fresh faces is a way to show it. I also hope that he understands the need to empower people more, because I think while you can appoint people as ministers, at least the perception has been that everything is decided at the PMO level. And if the PMO or the PM is busy and he's traveling somewhere or he's in Assam, things don't get done. So I don't know if there is going to be some of that. I think the UP ministry, the UP reshuffle may also happen. So I think he's trying to do things to show that he's on the job. He's at the control room. He's in the cockpit. He's got the plane under control. And he's, shuffling around with the buttons to make sure India is reassured and there is good governance, basically.
Well, Sanjeev Srivastava, the signals, the perception is very important. The fact that Mr. Rajagopalan mentioned that Y.S. Jagan Reddy is in town. Yogi Adityanath met the Prime Minister today. Also, the fact that RSS functionaries have been in and out of Delhi meeting the top brass of the BJP. Clear indications that there is some political activity that is happening. Do you think, Sanjeev, the Prime Minister may be looking at making a statement of getting in more political parties, AIA, DMK, BJD, or, Jagan Reddy's party? Do you think he will be making some of those statements as well to come back, with a rebound and actually show a much stronger front at this point in time, as the opposition continues to try and make a coalition with Mamata Banerjee and other opposition leaders coming together? Do you think he would want to do that at this stage, Sanjeev?
I'm sure he would want to do that. He desperately needs to do that. The last couple of months have been, perhaps, like you also said, that have been the most challenging for the Prime Minister. The halo of invincibility, which was around this government and the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, has suddenly been shattered post-Bengal loss and the way the country reeled under the second wave of COVID. Everybody was, you can blame, like Rajagopalan said, maybe the health minister will be sacked, but health minister, we all know they are just, everything is directed from the Gangotri. The Ganga flows from there. So they may find fall guys, but I don't want to get into this, who will be the fall guy, what kind of, but they need to get their act together. That's very important. But because I think right now is the lowest in their 7-year history. Now, whether he can, again, like Rajgopal said, convert this crisis and adversity into an opportunity, I don't know. But this adversity and crisis, a lot of people think was largely created by them only. So they better now convert it into an opportunity. You need good faces and you don't need 715 days, 2 years and 15 months, 15 days to pass to realize that so many of your senior cabinet colleagues are saddled with more than what they can chew. So high time course correction is needed. Countries like Bangladesh have overtaken us in
aren't you being
per capita income. So,
Aren't
yes,
you being rather unfair and cynical, Sanjeev Srivastava? Mohandas Pai, let me get you in here. Mohandas Pai, if the Prime Minister had done a reshuffle, 6 months earlier, they would have said, "Arey, pandemic ke beech mein hai." If he had done it before the pandemic, they would have said, "Abhi to bani hai sarkar, abhi reshuffle ki kya zarurat hai?" Is there any merit in that? Yes, there are problems. There is the biggest problem on the front of education. Why when schools and colleges have been shut for 1.5 years, we've had 2 years of CBSE exams being cancelled. We've had colleges where first year to second year to third year promotions taking place without any examination in universities. In places like Delhi University, online teaching still not happening the way it should. Schools not being able to go ahead with the online system of teaching. We could have done a lot in these 1.5 years when we knew that this is going to be something we have to grapple with for a while. Nothing has happened. So these problems exist. But is it really a question of why we didn't do this earlier and this is being done now? Is that something that has to be looked at, or do the problems have to be looked in? Health Ministry.
Pandemic was global as well as regional. How come Bangladesh overtook us in pandemic?
Navika, the pandemic
I'll
exposed the weaknesses.
Mr. Pai will answer that question.
Navika, the pandemic has exposed the weaknesses in many ministries. We have seen many ministers not in charge. When there's a crisis, you want to see your leader in charge. The Prime Minister has been in charge, but it requires a constant communication all the time. And look at the health bureaucrats. For example, when they opened up the vaccination for 18 to 44 and told the states to buy from the private sector, they gave them 3 or 4 days. They should have announced it, giving 15 days ahead for logistics to come. They knew the logistic problem was there. They've been seesawing on the 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 17 weeks. The communication has not been very good. For example, in the Central Vista, till the minister came and went after all these people who are running a fake narrative, all kind of narrative setting was happening. In charge, they know what is happening, they give confidence to people. And in a crisis, we need more people to give confidence to people. And I think this has not happened in many, many ministries. And the timing is perfect because, like you said, it is 2 years into the government. His midterm review can happen. Everybody's got an opportunity. We've been through a crisis. We're coming out of a crisis. There is great hope that we're coming out of a crisis. 6 months back, there was no hope. We didn't know what to do. The second wave came and we all suffered. There were a large number of deaths. Vaccination has taken off. More vaccines are coming. The production has ramped up. So many good things have happened. And now is the time for a great push forward. Because if we don't take the decision now, rejuvenate the cabinet and push economically, socially, maybe politically, the others on this panel know much better politics than me. But if they're able to do that, in the next 3 years, we'll see results. In Navika, all the hard decisions on the economy and all the reform like the IBC, the demonetization, the GST, everything has been taken. And that has had an impact. The impact and the benefit should come now. If we don't get the benefit in the next 3 years, we are going to be in serious trouble.
That's the point. And Chetan Bhagat, the tough decisions have been taken. The political decisions have been taken. Demo, GST, also abrogation of Article 370, CAA done, not done, but put on the back burner. The fact is, now is the time to concentrate on governance. And isn't that going to be the priority for the Prime Minister?
I think so. I mean, what will be very interesting to see is, of course, reshuffle means somebody gets something else. But I think what will be interesting to see is who are the people who are let go, who don't get any ministry after this. That's a clear sign that, somebody was not happy with the work they were doing or they could have done better, right? And who is getting the core ministries? And does the reshuffle mean a core top ministry? We have these certain more prime ministries, not prime ministry, but like home, defense, finance, all these really important ministries. If there are changes happening here, and that will be very interesting to see. He's always very good at managing the.
Rajagopalan, as always, raising his hand. Rajagopalan, no changes on Raisina Hill. Is that what you're going to say?
Yes. There won't be any change. You must appreciate Mr. Rajnath Singh handling this oxygen crisis. He got from Germany 23 factories. Can you imagine that? And second thing, even during the address to the nation, Prime Minister mentioned that he is going to give the entire thing to Home Ministry. What does it indicate? Second thing, Nirmala Sitharaman, she has handled the economy very well during the Home Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also, finance. Apart from that, John Biden gave that, IPR, intellectual property rights concession to the Mohandas Pai might do well, but Mr. Jaishankar. Therefore, there is no change in North Bloc. Apart from that, Navika, final point I would like to say. Everyone is saying about poverty.
No change in North Bloc, no change in South Bloc.
Then what are we even talking about?
I'm running out of time, Mr. Rajagopalan. The fact is what Chetan Bhagat said. How many sectors did not perform well? How many people will exit? Will it just be a reshuffle, revolving chairs, or will it actually mean substantial surgery? That is what the jury is out on. When the Prime Minister begins his assessment meetings, ideation meetings tomorrow, we'll get you the latest information on which way this is going, how soon are we on. But many people already saying the countdown has begun. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on debate number 1 right here on the News Hour. Taking a short break, and the newsmaker Jitin Prasada, the man who left the Congress party, not wanting to work for Vyakti Vishesh, but for a party, for an institution. Jitin Prasad joins me on the other side.